It had been a quiet, unremarkable Tuesday when she left. No fanfare, no dramatic goodbyes, just the faint sound of the front door clicking shut behind her. Lena had always been the kind of person who preferred silence, who didn't need to make a scene to be noticed. But this time, the silence felt different, heavy, like a shadow that had suddenly fallen over everything she'd ever known. Tom had woken up to find the note. "I need to find myself," it read in her familiar scrawl. He stared at it for longer than he should have, as though somehow expecting it to change, to tell him the truth in a way he could understand. But there was no more explanation, no further words. The house felt oddly empty. The morning sun filtered through the curtains in the same way it always did, but without Lena beside him, it felt cold. He had been so used to her quiet presence, the way she made her coffee just a little too strong, the soft hum she always carried as she moved around their shared space. He reached for his phone, but it was still too early to call anyone. He thought of texting, but there was no point. What could he say? The days that followed blurred together in a haze of confusion and hurt. He didn't know where to start looking, and more than anything, he didn't know why she'd left. Had it been something he did, or something he hadn't done? They'd been fine, hadn't they? But the more he turned it over in his mind, the more he wondered if she had been hiding something, some quiet desperation just beneath the surface. Her absence gnawed at him, a constant ache that made it hard to focus, to sleep. She wasn't coming back. He could feel it in his bones, the way the world had shifted without her, leaving a hollow space where everything used to make sense. He called the places she loved the little CF by the lake, the library where she spent hours sifting through old books and got nothing. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her friends hadn't heard from her. It was like she had simply vanished. The silence in their home was suffocating, each room a reminder of what once was. The couch in the living room still had the indentation where she sat, the blanket she always wrapped herself in lying on the floor, forgotten. Even her favorite mug, the chipped blue one, was still on the counter, where she'd left it the night before she left. Tom found himself doing things he never thought he would, staring at the clock, waiting for her to walk through the door. He checked the calendar, wondering if there was something he missed, an anniversary, a birthday, some milestone he had forgotten. Maybe this was just her way of pushing the reset button, but it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like anything he understood. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. It was postmarked from a small town on the coast, a place they'd visited once, years ago, but never returned to. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and as Tom unfolded it, his hands trembled. He recognized her handwriting immediately. "I'm still here." 3 words. That was all she had to say. No explanation, no promise to return, no mention of where she was or what she was doing. Just those words, the simplicity of them enough to break him open. For days, he thought about it obsessively. He read the letter over and over, each time hoping for more, but there was nothing more. Just those words, haunting in their brevity. He imagined her in that small coastal town, walking along the cliffs, her hair blowing in the wind, her mind free of the tea-eyes that had once bound her to him. Maybe this was what she needed all along, space, time, a chance to breathe again. But was that all? Was that all she needed to be gone? He had to know. He had to understand. So, he packed a bag, gathered what little courage he had left, and drove the 3 hours to the town she'd mentioned in the letter. The place was smaller than he expected, a sleepy little town perched on the edge of the ocean, with nothing but waves and seagulls for company. It was beautiful, in a rugged, untouched way, but it felt like a world apart from everything he knew. He checked into a tiny inn, the only one in town, and spent the first day walking along the beach, trying to clear his head. But the more he walked, the more he realized how absurd this all felt. What was he even searching for? Was it Lena he wanted back? Or was it the life they'd shared, the familiarity, the comfort of knowing someone truly understood you? That night, as he sat by the water, the sound of waves crashing against the shore, he pulled out the letter again. "I'm still here," it haunted him. Was she waiting for him to find her, or was this her way of saying goodbye? The next morning, he wandered through the town, stopping in little shops, asking the locals if they had seen a woman with dark hair, tall and slender. No one had. The town felt so empty, so far removed from his life, that it almost felt like a dream. As he walked down the main street, he spotted an old bookshop, a place where Lena would definitely stopped by. His heart beat faster as he pushed open the door. Inside, the smell of old paper and dust filled the air. Shelves lined the walls, overflowing with books that looked well worn, as though they had lived through several lifetimes. There was no sign of Lena, but something about the shop felt familiar, like she might have been there just moments before. The old man behind the counter looked up as Tom approached. "Can I help you, son? I am looking for someone," Tom said, his voice unsteady. "A woman, dark hair. She might have passed through here recently." The man studied him for a moment, then shook his head slowly. "I'm afraid I haven't seen anyone like that." Tom lingered for a moment longer, then, feeling like a fool, turned to leave. But as he reached the door, a faint voice called out from the back of the shop. "Are you Tom?" He froze. His heart pounded in his chest. Turning slowly, he saw her. Lena. She was standing at the back of the store, her figure barely illuminated by the dim light filtering through the windows. Her hair was longer, a little wild from the wind, but there she was, real, tangible, more real than any of the dreams he'd had about her. I didn't expect you to find me," she said softly, her eyes searching his face, as though she was trying to figure out if this moment was really happening. Tom didn't know what to say. His mind was a blur, a whirlwind of emotions: anger, relief, confusion, and something else, something deeper, like a well of longing that had never gone dry. "I didn't know where to look," he finally managed. "Why did you leave? Why didn't you tell me?" "I couldn't," Lena interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I needed to be away from everything, from us. I needed to find myself, like I said in the letter. I didn't know how else to do it." Tom stepped toward her, his heart a confusing mix of emotions. "But we could." Lena shook her head. "No, Tom, I had to do this alone. I didn't know if I'd come back, but I needed to figure out who I am, outside of everything we built." For a long moment, neither of them said anything. The world outside the bookshop seemed to stop, and Tom felt as though time itself was holding its breath. Finally, Lena spoke again. "I'm sorry for leaving without saying anything more. I didn't want to hurt you, but I had to go. I wasn't the person I needed to be." Tom swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking deep into his chest. She wasn't the only one who had changed. He had too. They both had. "I don't know what happens now," he said softly, his voice rough with emotion. Lena smiled faintly, her eyes still filled with that deep, familiar sadness. "Neither do I. But I'm here, and that's all I can give you." For a long time, they just stood there, words failing them, as the world outside continued on, oblivious to the quiet storm that had passed between them. Some things are gone forever, but that doesn't mean you stop searching. And sometimes, just sometimes, you find what you're looking for, even if it's not what you expected. And so they began again, two people who had lost their way, finding each other in the places they'd left behind.